You're listening to the Unsung Podcast, where we talk about classic albums and decide if they deserve that distinction. And we also talk about some unsung classics in the hopes of bringing them to a new audience. And at the end of it all, we let you decide if we were right or wrong. This is the Unsung Podcast.
You are listening to episode 37 of the Unsung Podcast. On last week's episode, we discussed A Healthy Distrust by Sage Francis. The votes are in, and the public have decided that this record does make it into discography, so thank you very much to all those who listened, and to all the few of you who voted. You guys need to up your game this week. On this week's episode, we are going to be talking about We Are the Romans by Botch.
Shut up!
Pat, you're listening to Unsung Podcast.
The Unsung Podcast?
The Unsung Podcast.
Double E.
You're listening to the Unsung Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Fraser, and I'm joined by two extremely white, pale men.
Hod it and dod it.
Hod it? Dot what?
Hod it and dod it. I don't know, it's something my dad would say.
It's pure shook today.
Alright. Steady on. You need to get racist. We had enough of that last week.
Whew, Chuchter, bringing out the T word.
David's proper leafy up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the only one that's actually allowed to use the T word. You guys have to peep it out.
Virtue signaling motherfucker.
To my right is Chris Cusack.
Yay! I set applause here.
To my left is the only other man in this room who had listened to Botch prior to this, which blows my fucking mind, given that Mark is a total
I'm in a hardcore band.
hardcore, emo-y, gothy, white guy, angry, angsty,
Quite angry.
rock guy.
Yeah.
So
how you can not
is
listen
this
to
too not hardcore for you?
No. I love
Okay,
this.
right. So this week we're talking about Botch.
Shut up!
We Are the Romans.
We are one of the definitive heavy albums.
Yes.
It's certainly the definitive, like, metalcore, post-hardcore kind of scene. I mean, ever.
Yeah,
I don't see the fuss, man. It's pretty shit.
I don't know.
All
if
right,
he's
well, we're just
trolling
going to
us.
leave now.
Is he trolling us?
I don't know.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed this record.
Okay, let's.
I mean, you would. Oh my god.
So yeah, this record.
But just enough of that shit. Right?
This is one of those records that when I was really getting into like good heavy music, when I was 16, I'd gone past the Korn stage and I'd gone past the Pantera stage.
You are not past the Korn stage now.
That stage yet.
You can be, you can enjoy what you used to like and still like it. Does that make sense?
You used the word
but,
past, like,
for fuck's sake. But so for me, Botch, Dillinger Escape Plan, Converge,
the big three,
Refused, and Mastodon. They were like my big five. That kind of spanned hardcore, punk, metal, bit of everything.
I mean, I think if you're talking like hardcore, post-hardcore, metalcore, blah blah blah, like Refused, yeah, I'll give you Mastodon's metal. So I would put.
I know, but his first two Mastodon records, yeah, they're not hardcore. They were way over the metal spectrum.
In that list as well.
Yes, I mean I fucking love Cave In. We've talked about Cave In,
you're right.
But they weren't one of my big like But they didn't define it as genre. That was the whole point. Was they spanned different genres. And yeah, for me, Botch and this album just fucking absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah, this is like stars aligning for a band. They're a good extreme hardcore, post-hardcore, progressive hardcore, whatever you want to call them, band. But this album is the shizness of everything coming together.
Do you think Converge really liked this record when they wrote Jane Doe?
Yeah, Ben Collar is on record as saying Botch were the band that everybody looked up to.
Yeah.
In terms of just being incredibly accomplished.
They lifted some things, I think, for sure, off this record.
A lot of bands have lifted things off this record.
Yeah.
Heavy hardcore bands that decided not to do 4/4 basically lifted things off this record.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, there were mathy bands before this, and there were interested, heavy bands before this.
It's the same time as Dillinger, though, right? This was the same time as Calculate
Infinity. Yeah, they toured together twice.
Yeah, that's my Nexus.
Can you imagine that?
I can't wait for your Nexus. I hope it's got all the imagination of your previous Nexi.
It does, actually.
3 steps.
I've run out of tabs on my one.
Okay, so Botch are from the American Northwest. They're from Tacoma in Washington. They actually played their last ever show in Seattle and are another of those bands from up there that sort of people forget are from up there because they don't play grunge. They got together in 93. They were all at school. They're one of the very few bands we've covered, a bit like Dirty 3, where they maintained the same membership throughout the duration of the band, which was 9 years. It was Brian Cook on bass, Dave Knudsen, Tim Latona on drums, and Dave Verellen on vocals. And as I say, they all stayed involved to the end. Apparently, according to Dave Verellen, according to Dave Knudsen, their first practice was just helmet covers, just to try and fire through their prehistory. Did a bunch of EPs, which later were combined into something, but their first album was American Nervosa, which came out in 98. They toured, I think it was about 7 weeks tour prior in 97 with a band called Ink and Dagger. They were really good.
Good band.
Including one of those dates was a show with Snapcase, who were doing really well at the time in Buffalo, New York State, to, I think it was 1,000 capacity. And that tour was for Botch like a big breakthrough moment where they were associated with this new emerging scene of experimental and inventive hardcore people, not just like beating their chests, but kind of toying with the genre a wee bit and bringing in elements of others. I know they very much associated themselves more with the kind of progressive noise scene than they did with sort of some of the chest thumpers of the time. So American Nervosa came out and they toured with Dillinger Escape Plan and a band called Jesuit. Yeah, I mean, I guess in a lot of people's minds they are associated kind of with Dillinger Escape Plan. Not just because of that, because of the experimental nature of what was going on at the time, because of the ferocity and how unsettling the music was. I mean, American Nervoso, it's a decent album. We kind of get back to it a wee bit. It didn't.
Do you know what? I really like it. It's the production on it is messy, but I think the production on We Are the Romans is a little bit messy.
Oh, I don't agree.
No, but it's not clean. I don't know. There's something really muddy about the guitars, and it sounds, they're not like double tracked or whatever. It's like just one really heavy fucking guitar that's not like perfectly scooped or anything. To me, that's a good thing. It fucking works perfectly. I think American Nervoso is the production is quite light. It's not as heavy, but it's still messy. But I mean, there's some really fucking excellent tracks on that.
I mean,
I love
the track
Hutton's Great Heat Engine. John Woo as well. Like,
I think John was alright. I think with Hutton's Great Heat Engine, there's a point, it's about a minute 40 into that track where they start just playing this huge down-tuned rattle thing, but I think the guitar solo is actually played on the machine head where he's just tuning it up and down as he's playing it, and the bass just drops down to the point where you can see the strings flapping. that is a point, I think, where it hinted at what Botch were going to do later on.
Yeah.
But I think that those are kind of few and far between in that album. I mean, I think it's an album that really benefits with hindsight, because there were a lot of decent experimental hardcore albums about at that time. There were loads of bands doing interesting things, but not to any cohesive, brilliant extent. I mean, Drowning Man were a good band, but they don't have a classic album. And Rock and Roll Killing Machine's a good record, but it doesn't come together the way Botch came together later. Something had to happen. And I don't think just listening to American Nervoso that you would necessarily have anticipated it. I think one of the things you can anticipate is the fact that they were unorthodox. I mean, even down to stupid things like when they toured with Dillinger Escape Plan, they used to go on stage to Destiny's Child.
Yeah.
Because their whole thing was they wanted to try and kick away from the hardcore scene at the time. And it is good, you're right. I mean, but as I say, I think it relies on what came after for us to really afford it a little bit more attention and try and understand the early signs of what was forming. Hutton's Great Heat Engine is unbelievable live, and we'll get to that later because we'll mention briefly their live record that they brought out posthumously, and the segment in that, as I mentioned, where they start dropping down is it's like so intense. It's how they finished it's almost how they finished their last ever concert. It's so good. So yeah, about 18 months after they brought out American Nervoso, they brought out We Are the Romans, which is really not a hell of a lot of time, given how ambitious it was, given the amount of work that must have gone into the arrangements on it.
Yep.
And then a year after that, they were touring with Dillinger Escape Plan. This time with Dillinger, who'd started to kind of take off, Botch with the support. There was a couple of interesting things online. An interview by a guy called Chris Pritchard, who was at one point, I think, Slave's manager, and he was in a couple of hardcore bands, and I think they might even have been opening in that tour, and he'd seen them and said that the gig they did in Kent, where they opened for Dillinger Escape Plan, was the single greatest hardcore show he saw in 2 decades. He said Botch were unbelievable and actually made Dillinger Escape Plan look kind of weak by comparison. And that's when Dimitri was singing with Dillinger, when they were at their most like feral.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't getting into the kind of Mike Patton territory. They were still really just throat rippers, you know. So yeah, I mean, Botch started out in the Northwest. They were, I don't know, they were not particularly well received by their community. I think a lot of people who were in the hardcore community expected tropes. They expected certain standards. They expected, you know, things from a song that they could latch onto, beat downs and such like. And Botch, early on, even though it wasn't as abstract as it became, were still a little bit too much for them at that point. As I said, they tried quite consciously to distance themselves from the kind of more macho, traditional hardcore scenes, bands like Earth Crisis. I think like Earth Crisis at the time, another big part of it was that, you know, they were vegan, they were very outspoken. Earth Crisis also very pro-life, but I think they set themselves up as a reaction to the kind of frat boy American kind of mainstream macho culture. But as the guys in Botch observed, they were like, the more they associated with those bands, the more they gigged with them, they kind of realised they were the frat boys. They were the frat boys of their scene. You know, they were that kind of youth crew in a vein of like early Snapcase, Strife, Hatebreed, that kind of very alpha male, you know, a lot of violence, not a lot of girls to the front. They were the things we spoke about Fugazi emerging as a reaction to it, you know, in the Riot Girl episode. And Botch had a lot of subtle humour in what they did. I think they really tried to kind of poke fun at bands like the band Race Traitor, for example, who had a lot of, like, as they'd called it, lofty political ideals. And Botch had a song later on called C. Thomas Howell as the Soul Man, which is that very cult film with C. Thomas Howell blacking up and pretending to be a black musician.
It's incredible.
Yeah, we should.
I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I have never seen it, no.
It's pretty special. We should probably have mentioned it last week, actually.
Yeah.
And so they were trying to kind of poke fun at these bands with these kind of very, very outspoken political messages, but which almost, I mean, in the minds of Botch, I noticed in a couple of their interviews, they felt that some of these messages almost became more noticeably about branding and marketing than they seemed to be about specific, sincere political beliefs. You know, there seemed to be something a little bit insincere about what these bands were doing, other than just posturing. They also found them like really quite difficult people to socialise with. So there was a real reaction to that, the kind of skull and crossbones aesthetic, I think is what they call it. And I think I'm maybe reading into it, but the alienation they felt from that local hardcore scene early on, combined with the alienation they felt looking around at some members of that hardcore scene, and the kind of distaste that it created, I think that pushed them in that much more idiosyncratic direction. I think that contributed to them doing what they could to stand out from that, whilst not completely disregarding their kind of heavy music roots. They were like, let's not fall into this bracket, let's not just be another one of these meathead bands or these knucklehead bands swinging elbows and fists around in a circle. And I think that really shows, not just in the kind of lyrical content and their kind of humour, but also in the way the music was arranged. Like they made a comment in one of the interviews about trying to deliberately get the audience to mosh at the wrong point by messing with the timing, by syncopating things. To just as you knew people, like there's like a humour in the musical arrangement in the sense that people would be just getting into a beat down, you'd deliberately throw in an extra beat so that their beat down was now out of time with the beat down, and just doing that and then doing it again and then doing it again and almost teasing them. Quite a tricky thing to do, but they, as we found out, seemed very adept musically at challenging people like that.
Yes.
A big part of that experimental kind of element to their music, I think, comes from their influences. Rather than just recycling the kind of early to mid 80s hardcore scene and stuff like Minor Threat, they were a band that frequently cited people like Drive Like Jehu. And actually there's a couple of songs in particular really do sound like Drive Like Jehu, almost like cover versions of Drive Like Jehu songs that were never actually written. They were really inspired by Helmet for their tuning early on. And Helmet, although they started out as, again, part of a meathead scene, Helmet very quickly pushed beyond that and became something a lot more unorthodox.
Yeah.
Ass suffers a great sex.
They also took the kind of drop tuning element from Helmet. I think when they were really young and they could barely play, they said it was a total revelation. They spoke about stealing riffs from Soundgarden and Sepultura, which
Alice in Chains as well.
Alice in Chains, yeah. I think those moments are a bit more apparent on American Nervoso and even before. So that the earlier EPs that were then re-released,
Unifying Themes Redux.
Yeah, they were originally Unifying Themes of Sex, Love and Death. Is that what it is? The EPs were like
Unifying Themes Redux was actually the first record I got because it was the only one that was in HMV and Inverness, and I was like, oh, I mean, this is interesting. It's a bit all over the place.
Yeah, for obvious reasons. Yeah, I mean, I think the original one only had, like, was it 9 songs or something, because it was the John Birch Conspiracy Theory EP combined with Faction.
Yeah.
And then there was another track that had come off a compilation, but it was re-released in 2002 by Hydra Head as Redux, and they added 7 more tunes to it. It's an interesting record. The Rock Lobster cover's kind of funny. It sort of reminds me of the kind of thing that you'd see a good band at your high school doing. Did your band at school ever cover Rock Lobster? We've not heard about your school band for a while, actually.
No, we didn't get that far. We basically went from covering NoFX to covering Idlewild.
It also has the original version of Frequenting Mass Transit, which was later renamed Frequency Ass Bandit. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's a bit tropey. It's got little moments, but it's nothing like massively special.
Hi, give us some money. Basically, that's all I've got to say. We need to pay for our website hosting and stuff like that. We have recently bought a whole bunch of new gear, so thank you to everybody that has been very kind to donate money to us. We appreciate it more than you know, but this thing keeps going, and if you want it to keep going, we kind of need funded a little bit. So yeah,
that's kind of key. It's like if you're not fussed about this keeping on going, don't encourage us.
That's fine. We understand.
But if you are fussed and you would like us to continue this journey into madness, then please,
we're doing it for you.
But yeah, any donations would be gratefully appreciated. Or if you can't afford to give some money, what you could also do is just tell a friend about the podcast. We've had a few people who have like tagged their friends in posts recently to get them to check out the podcast. That is fucking amazing. If you can keep doing that, that would make us not quite as happy as if you gave us money, but you know, like 85% of the way there, I think. So yeah, go to www.unsongpod.net/donate and thank you.
I'd trade riches for fame.
Would you? Shit.
In a heartbeat.
In the wrong game.
Yeah, and Botch also, along with those influences, they sort of described having more of a kinship with bands like Unwound. Unwound were one of those kind of bands that I think we mentioned a wee bit in the Blonde Redhead episode. They kind of straddled the art rock, noise rock scene and the hardcore scene. With some really, really interesting results. A lot of stuff, some of it not amazing, but some of it really good. And as I think becomes pretty obvious, the more you hear the dissonance in the Botch guitars, like they get a big admiration for Jesus Lizard and Shellac. And that stuff's more evident, the Shellac Jesus Lizard kind of influences are more evident on We Are the Romans, as opposed to the kind of clunkier stuff on the earlier one. Obviously the guys from Botch, when Botch dismantled, went on to do things, and I think
they did an EP before they disbanded, an anthology of dead ends.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that because it didn't actually come out until
after they'd split
afterwards.
up.
Yeah, so
apparently the recording of that was incredibly tense because they hated each other basically.
Yeah.
But do you know what, that EP is really good.
That EP was actually my introduction to Botch, or at least my introduction to Botch in terms of what I owned. I'd heard We Are the Romans, but I bought Anthology of Dead Ends first. Supposedly it was Dave Knudsen and Latona, the drummer, that were kind of at odds. They'd been at odds since the recording of We Are the Romans. There was a little bit of tension. Apparently the record, like, that was meant to be the third album as well, so they got 6 tracks into it, and so the Anthology of Dead Ends was what they took from that session, which was an incomplete third record. I think also there was an element, according to the interviews, that such was the shadow of We Are the Romans, like creatively and in terms of the immediate impact it had on other musicians, if not necessarily commercially, but it did cast a really long shadow, and they found it incredibly difficult to follow up. They were like, how can we develop and improve upon this, because it was such a big leap. You know, if you've gone from American Nervoso to We Are the Romans, which is a huge leap forward, how do you then continue that without either repeating yourself, backsliding, or doing something that's slightly redundant? And I think they felt that they were really struggling with the writing process on the back of that. And no wonder, they kind of made a rod for their own backs in that sense. Mark, did you listen to Anthology at all?
No, I only listened to American Nervoso, which I thought was okay.
Anthology of Dead Ends has possibly one of the best, like, slow breakdown of all time.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I was actually
just this fucking unbelievable halftime hit on the cymbal, and it's just like, everybody, if you were in a pit, everybody would die.
It has got a couple of really good tracks in it. It illustrates their kind of sense of humour, because they took all the names of countries, so like France, Spain, Afghanistan, Nicaragua, and just replaced the ends with M's.
Yeah.
So it's France.
So Japan is a really fucking great track.
Yeah, the track Japan has probably my favourite drum beat ever in the last 35 seconds, where the syncopation of the hi-hat and the snare and kick is just so clever. And really understated. It's so good. There's a really great and quite recognisable guitar effect on the opening bit of France as well. But I thought one of the most outstanding things about that EP is Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You'll get there in half the time if you take a seat on the shotgun side.
Which is like it's a lengthy song. Was it 7-8 minutes?
Yeah, 8 minutes long.
8 minutes long, and it has like piano, organ, violin at the end. Just this huge, sprawling, really moody, sung thing that just kind of came out of nowhere when you listen to the back catalogue.
I remember reading the Pitchfork review for this, and they fucking hated it because it was back when Pitchfork were just trying to be edgy as fuck and talk shit and didn't really talk about. Well, yeah, exactly. But like, and it was one of those reviews that hardly talked about the record. But then Afghanistan, which could easily have been titled S'more, Boring, Mung, or Ponderous. Ha ha ha.
Wow.
Well, you haven't actually listened to the track because it's fucking great.
Yeah, I think it's a track that sort of preempts the two final tracks on Converge's Axe to Fall album. The last two tracks where they got into like so one of the tracks almost sounds like Tom Waits.
Cruel
Bloom. Yeah. And
the best Converge album.
Yeah. That, I think this sort of set a template for how effective that can be if you judge it right, and you don't want to do a ballad. And I think this track's the perfect example of how something that's not overly heavy but is incredibly doomy and really sucks you in, and even the beauty of the ending works really well. Runs straight into this track Nicaragua, which is really noisy, really cacophonous, loads of guitar effects. Knudsen was using a Chaos pad at that point, which obviously preempted his stuff that he went on to do with Minus the Bear, which was a lot more effects heavy.
Not on Spotify, that record.
Well, Mark, he's going to have to actually start buying these albums.
I've got a copy of it I can lend you. It's you'd like it, I think.
Sounds interesting.
It's the production on it is beefier as well. It's cleaner and maybe a bit more straightforward. But
yeah, I mean, it's only 6 tunes. I don't know about straightforward. I think it's only 6 tunes. You're assuming if they'd been doing it as an album, it would have been maybe 4 to 6 more to go on there. And there's a fair amount of variety. I think they just hit a bit of a wall. It is a really tremendous record, and it does make you a little bit sad that they never actually got round to finishing it properly. Knudsen went on to do Minus the Bear, as I mentioned, which was like a bit poppier, bits of electro in it.
This is us on a western Atlantic coast with no place to be, just taking in the sea.
Big fan of the old Line 6 DL4 pedal, aren't they? Like really renowned for using that.
Yeah,
as well
just like my boy Prince.
Yeah, exactly. And double finger tapping, fan of that as well, which I frankly fucking hate. But I loved the way Botch used it. Really good. It's really effective. I can't say I'm a huge fan of Menace the Bear. I think it kind of overrides things a wee bit, and it paved the way for some really horrendously overly intricate.
I liked Highly Refined Pirates. I thought it was a good record. It had some really nice songs on it, but I think they kind of got a bit overwrought after that. Yeah.
There's a lot of that stuff in it.
They noodled down a little hole that I got lost in.
And the singer, did he not start Narrows?
Yeah, Ben
Aye.
Verellen did Narrows.
Painted is a fucking amazing album.
With it.
So good.
Bit of a super group.
Brother of Dave Verellen.
You've listened to fucking Narrows and you've not listened to Botch.
I know,
Yeah.
it's mad.
Somebody's been fucking skipping things, eh?
Well, see, I got into hardcore via punk, so I kind of went from punk to melodic hardcore to kind of like Converge and stuff like that. But I kind of completely bypassed Botch and all that. So
I don't know how you can bypass Botch.
I know.
It's
I didn't like Converge, but we went over this. I didn't like Converge for a long time. Like my route to getting there was via getting heavier and heavier and getting into power violence, then coming back to like Converge.
It's like
the
someone
way I
saying to
did
me,
it.
bypass that to driving or something like that. I'm just like, you don't have to love it, but how could you miss it?
Brian Cook, then
Well, yeah, sorry, Mark mentioned, by the way, that, no, someone in the room mentioned, one of you two guys mentioned that Dave Verellen was actually in the band Roy, which is like a folk band with his brother. But yeah,
which is also a great name for a band.
Roy.
Just Roy.
It's like calling a cat Stephen.
Yeah, exactly.
Brian Cook, busy boy.
His arms are snakes.
Yeah.
Russian Circles.
Well, he
Circles,
joined
yeah.
Russian Circles. He formed these arms are snakes.
Yeah, but
Russian Snurkles. Russian
Russian
Circles.
Snurkles. Smirkles.
I mean, these arms are snakes are fucking great.
Into the sweets. Now there goes your teeth. Shake your dick, turn it into a film streak like it's oil. We wanted to be lost in a surface hole, buried down so low. You can smell the flowers right from where.
Tremendous.
Russian Circles are unbelievably good.
Empress is got to be on this show at some point.
Oh, I might fight you over what album.
Sounds like an
that's-
episode to me.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, definitely one of the best live bands I've ever seen, and a go-to band whenever I just want to.
Yeah, you got to have chops to join Russian Circles as well, man.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Jeez, oh, yeah.
Yeah, he stepped him up.
Yeah, he played with Sumac and Mouth of the Architect as well.
Sumac are so heavy.
Again,
Yeah.
Mark's heard the obscure band.
I know. And
He's also a journalist. He does press and PR for different people. He does Chelsea Wolf and he does Mutoid Man and a whole bunch of bands. Something else about Brian Cook that I really wanted to kind of detour into, which I think is a really interesting.
Can we maybe, before you go into this, do the Nexus?
All right,
Because my
okay.
Nexus starts with Brian Cook.
Goddamn Foo Fighters Nexus music. This is fast becoming my least favourite part of the week.
I'm sorry.
Right, so I think the apathy will show in this one.
Okay, let's see it.
And I wonder if everything could ever feel this real forever. If anything could ever be this good again. The only thing I'll ever ask of you.
I think that's actually very good. Well done.
Well, I just wish somebody would chip in.
Send in.
If you chip in, can we work out a way to incentivise people chipping in?
Well, we just need to let them know in advance.
All right, you
Just
know,
ask them to do it to do a Foo Fighters cover.
Yeah.
I just make fun of them.
Anyway, so can I start?
You can
Because I just
start.
want to get rid of all these fucking tabs. So Brian Cook,
Uh-huh.
he is in Botch. He is also in Sumac,
Mhm.
along with Aaron Turner,
Of course.
who formed the band ISIS,
They're also great.
who did an In the Fish Tank with Aerogram. We talked about In the Fish Tank, that split
Yeah. yeah.
thing
Mhm.
done in Holland. Now, Aerogram feature Ian Cook, who's also in the band Chvrches,
Chvrches.
who some of us may have heard of. Chvrches recently featured a guest vocal spot from Hayley Williams from Paramore,
Oh, yeah.
and a former touring drummer of Paramore was none other than Josh Freese,
Oh,
who is also drummed with every person in the world.
Yes, the Vandals, Nine Inch Nails, Weezer.
So I can choose my way to get to Nirvana from here.
You can.
So I went to... He drummed on Avril Lavigne's Let Go. 2002 classic. Avril Lavigne appeared in Curb Your Enthusiasm at one point.
That is amazing.
I
Is that
believe.
true? That's too amazing to be true, surely.
Wait, is that right? I've got my link here, but I can't actually see where that link is.
It's all falling
I've got
apart.
my tab goes from Avril to oh no. Avril Lavigne appeared on a track with John Legend, who then was in Curb Your Enthusiasm, as was David Schwimmer from Friends. Another person that appeared on Friends was Sean Penn, who was shacked up with Madonna, whose Maverick record label Deftones were on, and Deftones' Koino Yokan record was produced by Nick Raskulinowicz, who also produced Mondo Generator's Dead Planet. Mondo Generator features
Nick
Oliveri, who was in Queens of the Stone Age, and Dave Grohl played on Queens of the Stone Age.
See, when you get to the point where my dad is at least half the way closer to Dave Grohl than your ex-wife.
Okay, can anybody get there quicker?
Yes.
Mark, do you want to do your boring one? Sorry, do the
Correct one. I have a correct one and I have a kind of fun one as well. It's not as fun as that. I'll do the fun one. Botch, as we've already discussed, toured extensively the Dillinger Escape Plan. Dillinger Escape Plan had a drummer on Ironworks called Chris Penn, or Chris Penny.
It's Penny.
Penny, yeah.
Penny.
Yeah, he then...
He was in... he was like their original drummer.
Okay, yeah, well, fair.
So he was on all their best records.
So he then left after Ironworks to go and join Queen Cambria.
Which is like fucking quitting a Michelin-starred restaurant to go work at McDonald's. Jesus fucking Christ.
Wow. A really, really squealy, annoying McDonald's as well.
And because
one full of toddlers.
Because for some reason they wrote a record called Good Apollo, I Am Burning Star 4, No Work for Tomorrow Part 2.
I like the name as much as I like the band.
For some reason, even though he wrote it, he was unable to perform there on the recording
because it was shit, and he realised afterwards
due to contractual issues.
Contractual issues. So he wrote a record that he couldn't perform on due to contractual issues.
So they decided, the band decided to phone Taylor Hawkins, who apparently learned and recorded all of Chris Penny's drum parts exactly for that record. And Taylor Hawkins is in Foo Fighters.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
So what was your fun one?
There you go.
Is that your fun one?
What's the boring one?
What was your boring one?
Matt Bales,
oh God.
Matt Bales produced this, and Matt Bales also produced Pearl Jam and Pearl Jam Nirvana.
Pearl Jam are Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
All right.
Basically, yeah.
All right, Chris.
Botch, on this record, I have a song called Mondrian Was a Liar.
Yes, that is true.
Yes.
Named after the...
P.A. Mondrian is a Dutch artist and thinker. And as you probably know, in the series Star Trek Next Generation, Lieutenant Commander Data has a Mondrian painting on his wall of his quarters.
You're saying that mine wasn't fun.
Called Tableau 1. As you probably also know, Dwayne The Rock Johnson... oh, there it is.
Tableau 1 there.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson
viewers.
made a cameo in Star Trek Voyager.
Yes,
which also
he
featured
did.
cameos from members of Next Gen. And an episode called Sunkatse, where he played some kind of like space gladiator. Other cameos, by the way, included other ways to get to this, including Mick Fleetwood and Tom Morello.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And he was an actual Next Gen. Also Stephen Hawking was in it, as was King Abdullah Al Hussein of Jordan.
Impressive.
In Star Trek, can you believe it? I'm sure Dave
Weird.
Grohl's probably met him. But yeah, and The Rock was also in a movie called The Other Guys with Will Ferrell and Marky Mark Wahlberg. Little known fact, Marky Mark Wahlberg did 45 days in jail of a 2-year sentence.
For a racially aggravated assault.
Attacking a Vietnamese guy, calling him a Vietnam fucking shit, and breaking his orbital bone, I believe. But yeah, so The Rock was in The Other Guys, and My Hero was in the soundtrack to The Other Guys.
Cool.
Yeah, Star Trek, philosophy, art, thinkers, wrestling, and movies. Get it fucking
Dull
right
as
up here.
fuck. Absolute dull as fuck. Can we go back to Avril Lavigne being in Curb Your Enthusiasm?
All right, Brian Cook, under a heading in my notes called Gayness,
Can we play us out first, please?
Oh yeah.
Interrupting my flow, but alright, here's that fucking dog shit piece of music again.
Alright, Gayness.
Right, Brian Cook, under the heading Gayness, because I didn't really know what else to write.
Brian Cook, under the heading Gayness. Sounds like a Botch title for a song.
It's like, what do you do in your notes? Do you like censor your own notes and police your own language and write homosexuality in music? I don't really know. I don't do that. So Brian Cook originally started coming out in 1997 when the band were on tour, although it took him a lot longer to commit to his family. Yeah, and so there's a really good interview that he did with the San Antonio Current, a paper.
A San Antonio Current?
San Antonio Current, yeah, it's a paper, magazine, webzine thing, from 2017, where he was asked about being an openly gay man in the hardcore scene at that time. It's also pretty telling, I mean, as well, that Botch attracts some funny looks for things like a track called Frequency Ass Bandit, and you know, some of their merch, like Botch had aside from their aforementioned sort of sense of humour, they had a bit of merchandise that was a photoshopped gay couple, like one man getting a hand job, that was adapted into one of their shirts that said Botch, best boy band ever, or best boy band in the world.
My old flatmate had that t-shirt, actually.
Great shirt. And I think they got some funny looks for, you know, people being like, oh, that's pretty homophobic, but you know, quite the opposite.
Yeah, it was more of a rebellion against like the uber macho hardcore movement.
Exactly. And quite at the behest of Brian Cook as well, who was only too aware of them trying to push away from that macho vibe. He began dating his now husband in 1998, and that's when he kind of really started to come out. And I think, albeit it maybe doesn't seem like that big a deal now, even just 20 years later, but being an openly gay man in the hardcore scene must have been interesting at times. He describes it as not being particularly difficult, but he says that a big part of that is because they did a lot of shows with bands like Unwound. They did a lot of shows with bands on the artier, more progressive side of the hardcore scene, and as a result he felt that in those environs he was quite welcome. It was quite comfortable. He wasn't very self-conscious, although he did accept that had they been one of the bands that went down the very kind of rigid route of the wife beater hardcore, it could have been more of an issue. Certainly he said that he had plenty of experiences of people, you know, saying things like faggot and stuff around him, and then becoming incredibly self-conscious because it was only after they realised he was in the room and they'd said it, and they'd go into these huge apologies where the whole thing actually became more awkward than it really needed to, because, you know, he knew they were just being careless with the language rather than being actively homophobic. He said his experience wasn't as bad. It wasn't bad, in fact, but that it could well have been a little bit more difficult had he been in that much more trad part of the scene. I thought it was also interesting that Botch toured and played in Russia shortly after. There was a really quite heavy-handed sort of purge from the media and social visibility of homosexuality in Russia at the time by Vladimir Putin. So he went to Russia at that time, and he said he felt it was okay because the places they were playing, the scene they were playing in, even in Russia, was quite progressive and there was no big deal. But their sound engineer, who was gay and also black, he decided not to go, because even when they'd just been playing in like the Eastern Bloc countries, Brian Cook had said that he'd even seen, you know, people just, you know, sneaking photos of this guy, and obviously the guy being a bit treated as a curio almost, you know, something totally exotic, and he was like, he totally understood why he didn't go there. Albeit it maybe is shallow, it's another interesting aspect to why Botch were something different in amongst the scene. They really did try to undermine so much the machismo that was about. I mean, I think they were if anything, they were kind of anti-macho, albeit musically powerful enough that they probably made a lot of the actual macho bands, you know, relatively jealous. As in that interview, it's really worth reading. He muses on the profile of gay people within the hardcore scene and how nice it is to have reference points as a young gay man or woman or anything in between, any member of the LGBT community, looking for role models within that scene. We obviously spoke about it with Against Me. So yeah, Brian Cook, top lad, great band, and last link, they did a DVD album, live album called 061502 or 61502, which is the date of their last ever show in a place called the Showbox in Seattle.
The 6th of September.
The 61st of May 1902.
Yeah.
Brian Cook in that is sexy as fuck, and I say that as a heterosexual white male. He is fucking hot. He's got a Gibson Grabber bass guitar, which is a badass instrument. He's lithe. Certainly during the song Hutton's Great Heat Engine, he is just ripping it up on the floor, just like backwards kind of crab headstands and stuff. The guy's a fucking animal. He's awesome. That is an amazing live record, really amazing. They open it with St. Matthew Returns to the Womb, which we'll mention shortly, which is an absolute killer track, and the huge cheer from the crowd at the breakdown is amazing. Japam, as Dave mentioned as well, is awesome. Man the Ramparts, the last track on the album, is stunning, and they finish it with getting the other band, they were called Playing Enemy, I think, up on stage to sing them. I think if I could choose a gig to have been at, people ask that question, what gig would you like to have been at that you weren't at? It would probably be that one. I've watched that DVD loads of times, and it's properly hair-raising, like absolutely amazing. And it's just so nice as well, the atmosphere around Botch, like hugging each other, like really properly hugging each other on stage, and it's just an awesome thing to watch. Yeah, I really love it. Highly recommended. Yeah, the album. Mark, you don't know shit about this album.
Well, what did you think of it?
I really, really, really enjoyed it.
Considering you've probably listened to a million bands that have been influenced by it.
Yeah, it all made sense.
Influenced is plight. I mean, like the band get interviewed about that a lot. Bands that just ripped Botch up
But like
right
some
off.
bands were like really fucking open about it. Like I remember reading an interview, Norma Jean said about Oh God, the Aftermath, which is actually a really good record, but they said we basically wanted it to sound like Botch doing Oceanic by ISIS. It was like they just wanted those two things in their sound. And then you hear, so many bands like Every Time I Die, Cancer Bats.
Yeah.
I mean, basically any hardcore band that go beyond a throwdown.
Yeah. Any of the mathcore stuff touches on Botch.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a fucking awesome title. We Are the Romans always just immediately jumped out as being a great title. The cover's cool as shit. It's like it's like a top-down shot of a city skyline. This is like pre 9/11. It's very foreboding. It's got a lot of like prescience to it. The turn of the millennium, there's a lot of that kind of like weird bleak atmosphere around the USA, the kind of sense of malaise, cultural malaise, which, to be fair, it seems to have been pretty accurate, certainly as things, as Dave mentioned last week, so little happened in the 90s other than cultural malaise, but we're now reaping the rewards of that and the divisions that were sown in that time and the radicalisation that took place in politics at that time. I mean, I can't remember where they said they got the title from. It was I think it was a philosopher of some sort. Dave, first track to Our Friends in the Great White North, one of the best opening tracks to a heavy album ever.
Just an absolute fucking monster.
Shut up!
Yeah, that riff's way ahead of its time, man.
Yeah.
And it's just one thing that I found really interesting about this record as a whole actually is I was really taken by how much screamo influence there was on it. Like, like 90s, a lot of that's on that I found, which I wasn't expecting. But you can see them twisting it into this kind of weird, kind of even more dissonant kind of thing.
With American Nervoso, the tracks had been about for like 5 or 6 years, so there was a lot of screamo in that, but to be fair, they were one of the people that were pioneering that at that time. Whereas with this, these tracks were written from that point onwards, so they were much more of their period.
Yeah, that DNA is definitely still on it,
Then like 3.5 minutes into that, To Our Great Friends, you've got
that amazing,
just that amazing sort of weird sort of spirals out, and like the chatting to each other, and it's like, what the fuck's going on? It sounds really sort of unbalanced.
I've written mathy concoction of insanity.
Yeah. And then, oh hi, there's just an absolute monster of a fucking riff comes in. And it's like, yeah, we will destroy you.
Yeah, it says fucking
I
fantastic.
think this song's really like.
It's hard to be constructive with this album and just not gush about it. It's
Yeah.
kind of what I find I'm trying to rein myself in.
Mondrian was a liar.
Yeah. As I never mentioned, Mondrian was one of the pioneers of the distill movement,
Mondrian's interesting
where
song
you reduce
because-
everything to geometric shapes and colours. There's their most simple.
I actually saw
fundamental-
some Mondrian in the Tate Modern last year. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. Yeah. Mark's totally in the cold here.
Yeah, this song is.
Mark, do you like colours and shapes?
I like.
What about the colour and the shape?
I like.
Do you like the colour and the shape?
I like most colours and lots of kind of shapes.
I don't think you got that.
I did get that.
Give me a fucking laugh then. God knows I need it. I need the reassurance.
I can't imagine seeing Mondrian as a liar. Was a liar live. I can't imagine how amazing that would be.
It's very. It's really complex, but it's not annoyingly complex like a lot of mathcore can be. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
No,
absolutely. Like
as such, I think it's also the closest on the album to what is arguably the album's highlight, St. Matthew's returns. The St. Matthew returns to the womb. This one is the closest to that in terms of being succinct and compact. And you're right, it's complex, but it's not overly indulgent. It's also got a fucking brilliant like bass guitar, drum breakdown intersection bit at the end.
I think what you're
So
hearing
good.
on this record is like just one of those records where the band is at their fucking peak. You know, all of them. You know, like Vrellin's vocals and his lyrics are so fucking seething. You know, they've just add this anger and energy to the whole thing. You've got Nudson's guitar just sort of redefining what heavy is through this. Dave Knudsen. You know, these like entangled mathy riffs that are somehow really visceral and simple as well. And then Cook just like this big fucking groove juggernaut.
Oh man.
And then Tim Latona, like he doesn't get shout outs as much as like we've talked about, like, you know, Converge drummers or Dillinger drummers.
He's
But what he done,
fucking
he's
brilliant.
so good.
Oh,
And like,
you know, he went into teaching. He just went into education and stuff after this. He didn't pursue a musical career.
yeah,
at
no,
all.
that's it. He never did things after, so he's never had that sort of legacy. But his work on Botch, he manages to keep all this chaos together. I don't think he did. I don't think he ever adds to the chaos, but he like just makes it perfectly aligned.
Some of his invention is absolutely sensational. The track after this transitions from persona to object. Sorry, Botch were of that era where all the names and the tracks were like a half a sentence, and
The loops going on at
the loops in that are amazing, but the drum breakdown towards the end sort of mirrors that breakdown at the end of Japan that I was talking about earlier on.
It feels like it's on the verge of like physically breaking down.
Yeah.
And then it never does.
That
It's just
wheezy
like,
thing. I think also the kind of opening riffs, the opening riff from that track is one of the most iconic from that entire scene. I mean, the combination of effects and the line, the tapping, the kind of is that off-kilter seasickiness to. I think that is one of the most standout. It's not necessarily the best tune on it, but it's one of the ones, if you play a snippet, people will identify it really, really quickly.
There's more riffs on this than most bands have in their entire career. The composition is really, really fucking interesting in this song.
Mm-hmm.
And see, I wrote here, the riff at 130 sounds like it's actually eating the speakers.
It's incredibly nihilistic, like the way it ends.
Totally, man.
That kind of way it just like circles and just like
It's like repeating arpeggio thing. It's like, it sounds like an Amiga 500 is just broken. It's just making weird sounds.
my
Like,
then
parents.
swimming the channel versus driving the tunnel.
That's why we never speak.
They're like, oh, we could be really quiet as well.
yeah.
And also we can make really ridiculous
It's got that total emo, like mellow thing that a lot of bands were doing right now with the kind of weird spoken word
yeah.
and mellow guitar
Oh,
part thing. That was
Yeah.
a pure in vogue thing at that time.
C. Thomas Howell is just it's the most, I think, legitimately hardcore to start with.
Yeah.
but it's also the one where it illustrates them doing that let's fuck with the audience thing, where they constantly keep moving the beat to stop them moshing on the beat, make them mosh at the wrong
and
beat.
then by the end of that track,
it drops out
fucking
to
vast.
Yeah, but it also goes out to almost zero before it actually erupts again. Yeah, it's like it crashes in. Like it really crashes back as well.
That pure spider riff at the start is almost a Slayer riff. You can just imagine the fingers like moving up in the fretboard.
Fucking hate Slayer. But it's also one of the few times where they really apparently use double kick as well.
Yeah, you can hear that at the end.
That bit at the end, it's like they're very sparse with that, but it works so well. It's almost like a hook when that bit comes in, and there's a wee bit of singing as well in the mix if you listen to it.
Yeah.
St. Matthew.
St. Matthew Returns to the Womb is just. It's a brilliant name, it's a brilliant song, it's an awesome video. It's just super cut from like loads of great shows with people flying over heads and diving through things, and it's so energetic, just really gets your blood going.
I was getting a bit fatigued at this point.
Really? I think that Swimming the Channel was a really nice...
exactly.
It is, but like I've heard that stuff so much, like when I was listening to fucking emo music in the 2000s, that those kind of songs just completely bypassed me. I thought this one was going to be a bit dull, but then it just isn't. It just becomes something so much more. It's utterly stunning.
That's why that one at the start I was going banana, banana, ba.
I'm pretty sure that's a riff for Jane Doe.
Yeah, possibly.
Should be. That's one that really shows their kind of like the role that Jesus Lizard and Drive Like Jehu were starting to play in them as well. It's one of those ones. The middle 8 dropout on the live record especially is proper goosebump stuff. See when you know it's coming in, right? There's like dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fucking brilliant. There's a bit in the video that sums up the way that gets my goosebumps going, which is during that middle section when everyone's going absolutely fucking nuts, it cuts to a couple just making out amidst an insane mosh pit. Like they're squeezed over the monitor, and this couple are just making out, and it's so clumsily romantic but really awkward and silly and yet fucking really cool, and it just illustrates that kind of thing where you just get so caught up in a moment and just get like carried away. It's fucking brilliant. It really I love that video along with that song. It fits so well. Frequency Ass Bandit.
Yeah, just great name, great track.
That beat down at the end, mate.
I know,
my god,
monsters.
I'll have more of that, please.
It's a much chunkier tune. Like it shows a bit more of the metal stuff. It
sounds a bit more like the stuff that came on the last EP as well.
Did you ever listen to Vision of Disorder at all? It was like
I never got into them.
There was a bit more of that and like Snapcase, that kind of like more spaced out, but a really pretty brutal tune.
Sex Symbol.
I Want to Be a Sex Symbol on My Own Terms, aside from being a good title, is basically a Drive Like Jehu tune played hard as fuck.
Yeah, totally.
It's got all the traits of it. It's not particularly metal or particularly hardcore at any point. It's just like a really aggressive noise rock song.
Yeah,
really propulsive. I love it. It really balances it out, especially coming after Frequency Ass Bandit, which was so chunky and a bit more trad. And then
Man Ramparts.
I don't know how long we can actually talk about Man the Ramparts. I fucking love it.
An absolute monstrous post-metal masterpiece.
It is. It's a total classic. It really is. It's like one of those ones that set the standard for a lot of post-metal. It conspicuously sounds at times like Old Man Gloom,
Yeah.
for example, and I think people perhaps underestimate how big a role, when placed next to bands like ISIS and stuff, how big a role just even that one tune played in opening people's minds, because that kind of like the Gregorian chant thing that they did in it, for example, is the kind of thing that a lot of the post-metal bands started branching out into, being a bit melodramatic, being a bit sort of less po-faced, because Botch were never po-faced. That was one of the differences between them and a lot of their peers, and I think that sense of adventure is something that went on to define a lot of the better post-metal more than anything. About 4 minutes into that song as well, it goes down to that weird bass modulated thing where he's tweaking the effects as he's going, and then there's about 2.5 minutes of that Gregorian chant before that enormous fucking riff comes back in at the end, and it's hardly in for any time before the tape starts getting like ramped up till it saturates and the whole mix clips and then cuts out. And the last track, We Are the Romans, even though it's a bit of a throwaway tune, there's something weird about it, and it really reminded me of what Refused did with The Shape of Punk to Come. You know, that kind of thing where they're like sampling it and resampling it, making it almost like drum and bass, making it sound quite
it adds a weird identity to it. Yeah,
it's some really, it's adventurous, but there's something extremely forward looking in that. And I think that's the weird thing about Botch, is that even in isolation, a lot of their individual moments were so imitated in entire genres. Not that they spawned entire genres, but they became significant for entire genres. They didn't just have an impact overall in terms of having a great album. They had an impact in terms of being a really nice departure aesthetically, and even just in terms of their perspective in hardcore. Like I said, less austere, less fucking macho, less like po-faced, probably is a really good way to put it. The more open-minded about the music they listened to, the music they played with, it's seemingly less prone to pontificating. They still had a political content to a lot of their stuff and a social content to a lot of their stuff, but it was way more understated, like less heavy-handed in its delivery. I just think there's so many elements of this band that went on to influence things that are more than just this one great record or a respectable back catalogue, but this one outstanding record especially. They perhaps, as much as almost anybody we've covered in this show, sum up what I think was the idea behind this in terms of who was this band? Like, why did they create such a big splash? Why are they still so significant despite being relatively
selling fuck all records?
Very modestly successful even for a hardcore or for a high profile hardcore thing. They really, really were something special. It was interesting reading about all the constant requests they get to do reunion shows. And the fact that they said the band felt like it finished too soon, but I mean, they're not exactly old. I mean, they get the members of Botch are only a few years older than me, so I mean they could still play. But as to whether they will is another thing, especially with the drummer being kind of out the loop of playing full stop. That'd be one hell of a reunion tour if they ever do it.
Here's my heel turn.
Kind of hope they don't.
How is this unsung?
Because it didn't sell any records.
But literally every single fucking band is influenced by this band. How is it unsung?
I'm sort of like, what?
No, it's fair enough. Within the genre, it's like a fucking defining album. Yeah,
but the very remit for the show is in terms of the wider
it's never going to appear on Rolling Stone's top 100 records or anything like that because it's too fucking heavy.
Ask your mum what she thinks of Botch's We Are the Romans album.
People in the know.
That is a fucking stupid argument.
I'll ask her when I see
but people in the know
tonight.
People in the know, yeah, but the people who are in the know are also people that are in bands that are like huge, like the guys in Just Escape Plan.
Yeah, but I know it's in the same way as Jane Doe is in it. This is it.
Even more so, like, I mean, Converge went on to have more consistently well-received albums. Like Botch landed, like hit their peak and then stopped. Right? I mean, if Botch had gone on for another 5 or 6 albums, this would still qualify in the same context as Converge, because Converge did Jane Doe, but then, as you've seen, we argued about was that even their best album. Botch, I think could have had future great albums. They never did, but they're unsung in the context of there are generations now listening to music that they don't even know this is what influenced it. And you are the living example of that. You didn't listen to Botch yet. You've
But I'd
probably
heard of
listened
them
to.
though. That's the thing. That's why I'm bringing it up.
It was unlistened to for you
but
because
it was not unsung.
But you're answering your own question. You didn't listen to them. They're totally
because I
unsung.
didn't, because it was one of those things where everybody mentioned them as being a band that were really popular. Like every single person I know knows who Botch are.
Yeah,
Your
but
mum?
if they've
I don't know my mum. She bore me.
No.
But I don't know her.
but if they haven't listened to it, what's the point? So hopefully they hear this
I
and
think
they
it's
go and listen to it.
I think we're having an nonsensical
So-
discussion. Like Mark hadn't even listened to this band properly, if at all, until we said it. And the fact that it's one of the greatest records of its genre, of a number of genres, is testament to the fact that, you know, when you do hear it and appreciate its brilliance, it's under-recognised. Otherwise, it would be the White Album.
Well, I agree. It has to go in. I
think it should- I think
Can
it
I
should.
go home?
Fucking better
Yeah,
going.
I think it should go in, but I'm just asking the question.
Well, I tell you what, if you've got a bee in your bonnet about this being an unsung, wait till fucking next week.
Oh mate,
Because you know
next
what
week.
we're doing? We're doing the first album by LaRue.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So it's like it's for me. It's like if West Coast had a pair of jeans and LaRue had the haircut.
And what a haircut. What a haircut.
I just don't understand it.
Fucking best haircut ever.
Our best song is a remix by a shit dubstep artist. Well, we'll talk about this next week.
Yes. So thank
anyway,
you very
go and
much.
vote for Botch.
Yes.
If you don't, you're an idiot. I
Please
need to
leave
go
us
home.
some reviews. Tag somebody in this, please, if you think they will enjoy it. Tag Mark's mum in it.
Yeah, please do.
She needs to know.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.